Srijiva Gopalaka Krishna Kirtana Ganana Tanaparam.
Good morning on the east coast of Canada. It is 10 o'clock in the morning, and we're here today for our weekly study of the Bhagavad-gītā As It Is, the original 72 Macmillan version, Vijaya Pandit in Italy. Look at how nice you look with your head shaved. And this is a regular class that we broadcast on live on Facebook stream, and also it is being recorded. As you all know, you get that message before the class begins that this is a recorded class that we're placing on the internet in order to give people in the future the opportunity to hear from the Prabhupada Disciples Association and its membership on this focus that Prabhupada is Guru, living with us in sound. And we very much appreciate your support and participation with us. And also, we want to stress the fact that this protection of Prabhupada's books and the protection of his legacy through his instructions to all of us is key to the future of Krishna consciousness. This is not just a theatrical presentation, but it is a effort by our group to preserve Srila Prabhupada's message, which has been so adulterated these days by so many different people and their mental speculation. This is just absolutely sad. And I know many of you are online and you see all of the controversy that goes on. It's quite extraordinary to see how much chaos has befallen this glorious movement. And we're trying to maintain sanity in the midst of madness. This is what this is. This is complete madness that we're witnessing. And this is a program of sadhana. That means, like Yaśodā-nandana Prabhu, Nasta prayeshu abradeshu nityam bhagavata sevaya. By regular attendance in the Srimad Bhagavatam class, this is the method. This is a sadhana program. And we have people coming every week. It varies from class to class because people have their option. They can choose what to do with their time. They can choose what they want to do with their life. It's not up to us to make a decision for them. But for those who are serious about Krishna consciousness, then this sadhana program that we're conducting online is key to maintaining your spiritual enthusiasm. Yes, enthusiasm, utsaha, this desire to go back home, back to Godhead in this lifetime, through chanting your rounds, through coming to the classes, by following the rules and regulations, and by preaching Krishna consciousness in your local area, distributing prasadam, and following in the footsteps of great souls like Jayananda, servant of the servant of the servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So here we are. We're reading from the beginning diaries of Srila Prabhupada. And they give us a lot of insight in how to handle Lakshmi, how to organize time, how to preach Krishna consciousness, thinking big. I think there was a book written, Hunting Rhinoceros. Prabhupada gave that example. If you go hunting, hunt rhino. Because even if you don't achieve it, people will just say, well, it was rhinoceros anyway. So like that, we're seeing how Prabhupada had a very big vision for himself in terms of how he wanted to spread Krishna consciousness globally, and he was in touch with all kinds of foundations and big people like that. So we should also follow in his footsteps and do the same thing. So, Vinkat Prabhu, do you have the March highlights? Okay. Is that going to be good enough for you? Is that going to work, that snippet I gave?
Yeah, I think it'll be fine.
Okay, thank you. Vinkat's in South India, so this is a global broadcast. Books. So income. Now, this will be the summary, and then we'll move forward and go to each page in moving forward as we continue to study Prabhupada's behavior, daily behavior in spreading the Krishna consciousness movement. So we'll read this. It's a little extensive, but it'll give us an overview, and then this way we can go through the specific days, and in this way get an overall understanding of how to behave in our own spiritual life, following in his footsteps, like I said. Income, $9, contributions and books. On the 7th, the collection. Okay, so he divides it into books, classes, kirtans, and letters and contacts. So he's books, classes, and kirtans, and letters and contacts. Those are the three lists. So the collection made out of a contribution and books was $28 on the 7th. On the 9th, Larry Bogart returned books for Mr. Lauglin to examine, went to Paragon. Paragon had received 35 sets. Up to date, I've taken back 15 sets. 20 sets remain with them. Income by contributions and books, $13. One set of books left with New Direction Books, 333 6th Avenue. So he's putting it out in different stores. Went to Paragon Books, corrected in error in stock. On the 15th, he requested Joan to pick up books from Paragon. She agreed to do it. On the 16th, Joan was kind enough to get my books, 16 sets from Paragon Book Gallery. The books were brought and kept in stock, so using them as a warehouse. On the 18th, a letter from Chandra Shekhar. There is some good sales of Srimad Bhagavatam, he reports. On the 23rd, sent letter to Library of Congress asking for the library card number of my Srimad Bhagavatam. 26, today when I came back from Dr. Mishra's apartment at 1 p.m., I saw the window on the door broken. Oh, and entering the door, I saw my tape recorder, typewriter, and book bags stolen. 29th, Robert brought me an old typewriter. Income, one set of books sold, $16.80 by check. And on the 30th, Peter Blaine handed over to me one German machine in bold type. Okay, moving forward, classes and kirtans. So second category. Ekadasi observed on the 3rd. In the evening, only 2 visitors came. 2 visitors. There were some topics on the meditation, yoga, income, contribution, $1. So these people came to give him $1. Dr. Mishra wanted my kirtan in his meetings. I'm considering. On the 5th at 2 o'clock, went to Ananda Ashram. Kirtan was performed in the evening, very much appreciated. On the 6th, the whole day passed at Monroe Anand Ashram. In the morning, there was kirtan. Returned from Monroe at 6 p.m., talked with Mr. Majid of Tehran, Iran, took lesson for more than 1.5 hours. Today is Adivash Day of Gaur Purnima. Devotee at Vrindavan and Navadvip are enjoying the celebration. I have come here to serve the Lord and not for personal happiness. On the 7th, Lord Chaitanya's birthday, fasting observed till 5:30 p.m. 7 ladies and a gentleman attended today's meeting. There were topics on Gita and Kirtan. On the 9th, meeting held from 7 to 9:30 p.m. 8 members attended the lecture on Gita and Kirtan. On the 10th, Kirtan performed at Studio Yolanda. 2 other ladies and another gentleman came. So he's being meticulous on the numbers of people that are coming out. And you can see there's not many people. So we should never be discouraged by numbers. We're looking for quality people, not quantity. 12th, I was to go to Monroe, but Yolanda did not go, so I couldn't go there. Food made for Dr. Mishra and partly distributed to Cohen and Yolanda. Cohen preparing to go to California. 1/2 tape record prepared for him. He assured maintenance of rent of my room. 13th, in the evening, 2 ladies and Mr. Shushman came. There was some discussions. One of the ladies brought bread for me. On the 15th, in the evening, 5 ladies and a gentleman visited. There were some talks. 16th, in the evening, there was a meeting. The attendance was 3 only. Income $3 only by contribution. 17th, in the evening, 2 ladies and 1 gentleman, Mr. Tony, came to see me. There was some discussions. On the 18th, tonight, 5 ladies and a gentleman attended the meeting at 7 p.m. to 9:50 p.m., 15-minute talks. Kirtanam lectures on the Bhagavad-gītā performed. Income by contribution, $4. 19th, I prepared on tape recorder Chintamani. The 20th, some 4 gentlemen and ladies came to see me. We talked for some time. On the 21st, I distributed prasadam to all at Dr. Mishra's apartment. In the evening, there was meeting. 5 ladies and gentlemen attended. Gita explained about individuality of living entities. On the 22nd, in the evening, 2 gentlemen and a lady came, discussed for some time. So 23rd, today's meeting, 2 gentlemen attended. So he's very rigorous schedule of preaching. Constant reaching out to people, looking for someone or some people to join him in his mission. Captain, on the 24th, Captain Pandya and Mrs. Pandya came to see me. 3 ladies and 3 gentlemen, besides the captain and his wife, attended the meeting. Mr. Robert brought some fruits and grains for me. 25th, meeting in the evening, 7 ladies and gentlemen attended. Captain and Mrs. Pandey also were there. Income, $22. Everyone brought some fruits and grains. There were 2 newcomers, and their address was taken. 27th, I spent the night at Studio 501. One Mr. Howard of 71st Street became acquainted with me. He appears to be a good friend. 28th, there was a meeting in the evening. 5 ladies and gentlemen attended. Bhagavad-gītā discussed. On the 29th, went to see the loft of Mr. Paul. Can be utilized for a meeting and Sankirtan purpose nicely. On the 30th, evening meeting held and 7 attended. Shushman and Paul will come Friday, 1st of April, to take me to the loft. 31st, only 2 persons came today to meet me. So we're going to carry on with this reading tomorrow morning, and we'll read the letters and contacts for his long list of things to do. This is something that is very important, that we start to carry this type of example in our own spiritual practices, sadhana, and preaching work as well. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, and all glories to his service in the mission of Lord Chaitanya. So Vinkat Prabhu, please play the Jaya Radha Madhava prayers, and we'll have the class on the Bhagavad-gītā with His Grace Yaśodā-nandana Prabhu, who's out in California. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Yaśodā-nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yaśodā-nandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Banachari Jamuna Tira Banachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yaśodā-nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yaśodā-nandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Bana Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari Jaya Muspa Paramahansa Parivrajaga-Acārya Sittareshwara Samāda Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava ki Jai Ramacārya Sri Haridas Thakur ki Jai Prem se Kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda ki Jai Sri Radha Krishna Mok Gopinath Sam Khanda Radha Khanda Giridhar ki Jai Vrindavan Dham ki Jai Navadvip Dham ki Jai Ganga Mai की जाए जमुना माई की जाए गुरु द्वारका धाम की जाए स्वामी तो भक्तविंद की जाए और ग्लोरी टू द असम्बली और ग्लोरी टू द असम्बली थैंक यू वेरी मच
ओम अज्ञानतिमिरन्दस्य ज्ञानञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपः कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरोः श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरुन् वैष्णवंश्च श्रीरूपं सागरजातं सहगणा रघुनाथन् अन्वितं तं सजीवं सद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपादं सहगणा ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितंश्च हे कृष्ण करुणा सिन्धो दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिकान्त राधाकान्त नमोऽस्तुते तप्तकाञ्चन गौराङ्गी राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वञ्चकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. Welcome everyone to this reading and discussion on Bhagavad-gītā As It Is. We are reading from the non-edited, non-adulterated, original 1972 Bhagavad-gītā Macmillan edition. Today we'll be reading from chapter 8, text 16 and 17. All translations, synonyms, and purports by His Divine Grace. We have text number 15. By His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupāda, Founder-Ācārya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, also known as the Krishna Consciousness Movement. Text 15. Mamupetya punarajanma dukkhalayam shashvatam napnuvanti mahatmanah samsiddhim paramam gataha. Mam unto me, upetya achieving, punaha again, janma birth, dukkha alayam place of miseries, ashashvatam temporary, na never, apnuvanti attain, mahatmana the great souls, samsiddhim perfection, paramam ultimate, gataha achieved. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. After attaining me, the great souls who are yogis in devotion never return to this temporary world, which is full of miseries, because they have attained the highest perfection. Purport. Since this temporary material world is full of the miseries of birth, old age, disease, and death, naturally he who achieves the highest perfection and attains the supreme planet, Krishna Loka, Goloka Vrindavana, does not wish to return. The supreme planet is described in Vedic literature as beyond our material vision, and it is considered the highest goal. The Mahatmas, great souls, receive transcendental messages from the realized devotees and thus gradually develop devotional service in Krishna consciousness and become so absorbed in transcendental service that they no longer desire elevation to any of the material planets, nor do they even want to be transferred to any spiritual planet. They only want Krishna's association and nothing else. Such great souls in Krishna consciousness attain the highest perfection of life. In other words, they are the supreme souls. Text 16. Abrahma bhuvanalokaha punaravartino arjuna mamupetya tu kaunteya punarajanmana vidyati. Abrahma up to the Brahmaloka planet, Bhuvanat from the planetary systems, Loka planets, Punaha again, Avatirnaha returning, Arjuna, O Arjuna, Mam unto me, Upetya arriving, to but, Kaunteya, O son of Kunti, Punah Janma rebirth, Na never, Vidyate takes to. Translation. From the highest planet in the material world down to the lowest, all are places of misery wherein repeated birth and death take place. But one who attains to my abode, O son of Kunti, never takes birth again. Purport. All kinds of yogis, karma, jnana, hatha, etc., eventually have to attain devotional perfection in bhakti yoga or Krishna consciousness before they can go to Krishna's transcendental abode and never return. Those who attain the highest material planets or the planets of the demigods are again subjected to repeated birth and death. As persons on earth are elevated to higher planets, people in higher planets such as Brahmaloka, Chandraloka, and Indraloka fall down to earth. The practice of sacrifice called Panchagni Vidya, recommended in the Katha Upanishad, enables one to achieve Brahmaloka. But if in Brahmaloka one does not cultivate Krishna consciousness, then he must return to earth. Those who progress in Krishna consciousness in the higher planets are gradually elevated to higher and higher planets, and at the time of universal devastation, are transferred to the eternal spiritual kingdom. When there is devastation of this material universe, Brahma and his devotees, who are constantly engaged in Krishna consciousness, are all transferred to the spiritual universe and to specific spiritual planets according to their desires. Text 17. Sahasra yuga paryantam haryad brahmano viduhu ratrim yuga sahasrantam teho ratra vidu janaha. Sahasra, 1,000, yuga, millenniums, paryantam, including, aha, they, yat, that, brahmanaha, of Brahma, viduhu, know it, ratrim, night, yuga, millenniums, sahasra antam, similarly at the end of 1,000, te, that, aharatra, day and night, vidaha, understand, janaha, people. Translation. By human calculation, 1,000 ages taken together is the duration of Brahma's one day, and such also is the duration of his night. Purport. The duration of the material universe is limited. It is manifested in cycles of kalpas. A kalpa is a day of Brahma, and one day of Brahma consists of 1,000 cycles of 4 yugas or ages: Satya, Treta, Dwapara, and Kali. The cycle of Satya is characterized by virtue, wisdom, and religion, there being practically no ignorance and vice, and the yuga lasts 1,728,000 years. In the Treta Yuga, vice is introduced, and this yuga lasts 1,296,296,000 years. In the Dwapara Yuga, there is an even greater decline in virtue and religion, vice increasing, and this yuga lasts 864,000 years. And finally, in Kali Yuga, the yuga we have now been experiencing over the past 5,000 years, there is an abundance of strife, ignorance, irreligion, and vice, true virtue being practically non-existent. And this yuga lasts 432,000 years. In Kali Yuga, vice increases to such a point that at the termination of the yuga, the Supreme Lord himself appears as the Kalki Avatara, vanquishes the demons, saves his devotees, and commences another Satya Yuga. Then the process is set rolling again. These 4 yugas, rotating 1,000 times, comprise one day of Brahma, the Creator God, and the same number comprise one night. Brahma lives 100 of such years and then dies. These 100 years by earth calculation total to 311 trillion and 40 million earth years. By these calculations, the life of Brahma seems fantastic and interminable, but from the viewpoint of eternity, it is as brief as a lightning flash. In the causal ocean, there are innumerable Brahmas rising and disappearing like bubbles in the Atlantic. Brahma and his creation are all part of the material universe, and therefore they are in constant flux. In the material universe, not even Brahma is free from the process of birth, old age, disease, and death. Brahma, however, is directly engaged in the service of the Supreme Lord, in the management of this universe. Therefore, he at once attains liberation. Elevated sannyasis are promoted to Brahma's particular planet, Brahmaloka, which is the highest planet in the material universe, and which survives all the heavenly planets in the upper strata of the planetary system. But in due course, Brahma and all inhabitants of Brahmaloka are subject to death according to the law of material nature. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Bhakti Siddhanta Shishyaya Bhaktivedanta Namine Prasannaya Prashantaya Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Bhagavad-vandanam Khadyam Guru Vandana Purvakam Kshiram Sharkara Yuktam Kadatehi Visheshataham Adadana Strinandanter Idam Yachi Punaha Punaham Srimadrupa Padam Bhoja Dhulisyam Janma Janmani Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Sri Rup Sri Sanatana Bhatta Raghunata Sri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Raghunata Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. I wanted to point out before we begin discussing, there's a very nice devotee from Nevada, United States, Madhukanta Prabhu. He has a beautiful picture of Srila Prabhupada traveling on the subway in New York City in 1966. Very sweet. There's also a picture on the screen of Shyamasundar Prabhu from Australia. He has a picture of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu dancing with Lord Nityananda and Advaita Prabhu in a beautiful Samkirtan. Very sweet, very sweet. So I also see that Vijay Pandit Prabhu from Italy, between him and his good wife, there's some pictures, some books of Srila Prabhupada. And maybe, I don't know if these are Jagannath deities behind there. There's some kind of transcendental deities there, being very, very effulgent, very sweet, very sweet. So this is a very important section of Bhagavad-gītā. Why? Because it gives us a perspective on the universal position of the creator of this universe, Lord Brahma. We see many times in Bhagavad-gītā, Krishna explains that if you come back to my abode, you don't come back here. We see in text 15, Krishna explained, Mamupetya punarjanma dukkalayama sasvatam naptuvanti mahatmanaha samsiddhim paramam gatim. Lord Krishna explains, after attaining me, the great souls who are yogis in devotion never return to this temporary world, which is full of miseries, because they have attained the highest perfection. So the question comes up, what is that highest perfection? Now, Prabhupada explains nicely in text 15, the highest perfection means to attain the supreme planet, Goloka Vrindavan, Krishna Loka. Everybody on this call is familiar with the book called Brahma Samhita, which are very nice shlokas or mantras compiled by Lord Brahma, the creator of the universe, in glorification of Krishna, where he described the highest planet in the universe in the 5th chapter, Chintamani Prakara Sadmashu Kalpavriksha, Lakshabhritishu Surabhira Vipalayantam. That Lord Brahma is describing that this abode is made of Chintamani, touchstone, Prakara Sadmasu, Kalpa Vriksha. They have Kalpa Vriksha tree, desire trees, that one can obtain anything that one may desire from these Kalpa Vriksha trees, very special trees that are not found in this world. Lakshmi Sahasrasha Sambrahma Sevyamanam. Lord Krishna is served by hundreds of thousands, millions of Lakshmis or Gopis who are serving him constantly. It's very, very special place, very transcendental place. And what is the benefit of going there? No more suffering, no more birth, no more death. Just yesterday, I had a relative explain to me how in one airport, because now with the internet, they have all kinds of different events, social events, political events that are broadcast 24 hours a day. And I was thinking about this verse while I was listening to that piece of news, that one airplane, one air traffic controller was telling 2 airplanes ready to land, do not land, abort, abort. Go up instead of going down because there's somebody running on the tarmac. I mean, that is pretty crazy, but this is a situation you will not find in the spiritual world. This kind of madness. Just a little while ago, we had one devotee from Turkey, and as part of the discussion of the nature of the material world, we were discussing how in Turkey they had massive earthquakes, something like 8.2 or 8.5, which is a massive, one of the highest levels of earthquakes. And so much devastation took place. So many buildings collapsed, so many people died, and there was so much chaos, so much suffering, so much confusion. Not a question is, you think anybody prayed, oh, my dear Lord, please send us a nice earthquake so we can see what it feels like? Nobody wants that. Nobody is praying for suffering. Nobody is praying for anxiety or confusion. But that by the very nature of the material world, this takes place. That's why if you look in this verse, in its second Sanskrit line, it says, Dukkalayam asasvatam. That this place is full of miseries and it is temporary. Last year in Florida, they have a massive hurricane that hit the southwestern part of the state. It was pretty devastating. Pretty devastating. I could see some people had lost their homes, their boats, their houses. Everything was devastated. Now again, the same question. Did anybody wish for that? No. Did anybody want that? No. Can anyone prevent that? Our material scientists are very proud of their achievement. Can they stop the process of birth and death? Can they stop earthquakes? Can they stop hurricanes? A few years ago in India, there was one big river that flooded. And someone sent me a picture. It looked just like the ocean. There was no earth to be seen, no land to be seen. It was flat, all water. As a matter of fact, there is a big temple near where Lord Ramachandra passed one time called Mantralaya in Andhra Pradesh, South India. And there was so much water that the government had to rescue one Swami from the Madhva Sampradaya in this special mat called Raghavendra Swami mat. They had to take him out by helicopter. Did anybody pray, oh, my dear Lord Krishna, please send us a very nice flood? Nobody wants that. But it will come. It will come. We see in the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, the inhabitants of Brahmaloka and the Sapta Rishis, the Satyaloka, these very highly elevated place in the universe above the pole star, they are praying for the welfare of living entities in the material world because they are suffering from thirst, hunger, insatiable sex desire, so much heat, so much cold, so much anxiety. But higher level of the universe, there is not so much suffering. They are situated in mode of goodness. The modes of passion and ignorance are very little there. But they are praying for the benefit of the living entities in the lower part of the universe. Why? Because it is the characteristics of great souls, Mahatmas, Mahajanas. Maha-atma means great soul. Mahajana, great personalities. They are praying for the welfare of such person. Srila Prabhupada explains in text number 16, the practice of sacrifice called Panchagni Vidya, recommended in the Katha Upanishad, enables one to achieve Brahmaloka. But if in Brahmaloka one does not cultivate Krishna consciousness, then he must return to earth. Those who progress in Krishna consciousness in the higher planets are gradually elevated to higher and higher planets, and at the time of universal devastation are transferred to the eternal spiritual kingdom. When there is devastation of this material world, universe, Brahma and his devotees, who are constantly engaged in Krishna consciousness, are all transferred to the spiritual universe and to specific spiritual planets according to their desire. Now, this is quite significant because it is a firm conviction of those people who follow the Vedic system, that those who are highly elevated sannyasis and brahmacharis, at the end of their lives, they are transferred to Brahmaloka, or those who practice specific austerities recommended in the Vedas. They're promoted to a very long duration of life, a very high standard of living, and at the end of Brahma's life, if they're completely Krishna conscious, which most of them are, they're elevated to the spiritual world. Now the question is that the process that we have to follow? First go to Brahmaloka and then all the way to Vaikuntha, Goloka? But Krishna here also says you can go directly there. In the text 15, he says, after attaining me, the great souls who are yogis in devotion never return to this temporary world, which is full of miseries, because they have attained the highest perfection. We have often discussed in these meetings the verse from Bhagavad-gītā, chapter 4, text number 9, Janma karma chame divyam, evam yo vetti tatvataha, tyaktva deham punarjanma, naiti mamiti so Arjuna. That, my dear Arjuna, one who understands the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not come back to this material world, goes back to the spiritual world after leaving this body. Prabhupada quoted that verse when Jayananda Prabhu, after he heard that Jayananda Prabhu had departed from his body. Jayananda Prabhu was hearing the Maha Mantra at the time of death. And Prabhupada said he went back to Godhead. So now the next question may be, well, if Brahma lives for such a long time, What is that long time? Because in this current situation in the material world, to live for 100 years is considered a very big achievement. Very big achievement. Very long achievement. So the question comes that the duration of Lord Brahma's life is considered to be 311 trillion years. Very, very long life. I'm going to read from a few citations from different parts of Srila Prabhupada's book discussing this exact point. From the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 6, Text 30, 1-630. After 4,300 million solar years, when Brahma awoke to create again by the will of the Lord, all the rishis like Marichi, Angira, Atri, and so on were created from the transcendental body of the Lord, and I also appeared along with them. The duration of a day in the life of Brahma is 4,320,220 years, solar years. This is stated also in the Bhagavad-gītā. So for this period, Brahmaji rests in Yoga Nidra within the body of the Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, the generator of Brahma. Thus, after the sleeping period of Brahma, when there is again creation by the will of the Lord through the agency of Brahma, all the great rishis again appear from different parts of the transcendental body, and Narada also appears. This means that Narada appears in the same transcendental body, just as a man awakes from sleep in the same body. Sri Narada is eternally free to move in all parts of the transcendental and material creations of the Almighty. He appears and disappears in his own transcendental body, which is without distinction of body and soul, unlike conditioned beings. Another nice purport by Srila Prabhupada, Canto number 1, Chapter 10, Text 21, 1:10-21. They said, here is he, here he is, the original personality of Godhead, as we definitely remember him. He alone existed before the manifested creation of the modes of nature, and in him only, because he is the Supreme Lord, all living beings merge as if sleeping at night, their energy suspended. Srila Prabhupada explains in the purports, there are two types of dissolution of the manifested cosmos. At the end of every 4,320,000,000 solar years, when Brahma, the Lord of one particular universe, goes to sleep, there is one annihilation. And at the end of Lord Brahma's life, which takes place at the end of Brahma's 100 years of age, in our calculation, at the end of 8,640,000,000 years, multiplied by 30, by 12, by 100 solar years, there is complete annihilation of the entire universe. And in both the periods, both the material energy called the Mahatattva and the marginal energy called Jiva Tattva merge in the person of the Supreme Lord. The living beings remain asleep within the body of the Lord until there is another creation of the material world. And that is the way of the creation, maintenance, and annihilation of the material manifestation. The material creation is affected by the interaction of the three modes of material nature set in action by the Lord. And therefore it is said here that the Lord existed before the modes of material nature were set in motion. In the Shruti mantra, it is said that only Vishnu, the Supreme Lord, existed before the creation, and there was no Brahma, Shiva, or other demigods. Vishnu within each and every universe. The seeds of the universe develop in gigantic forms in the way seeds of a banyan tree develop into numberless banyan trees. This Mahavishnu is the plenary portion of Lord Sri Krishna, who is mentioned in the Brahma Samhita as follows, quote, "Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto the original personality of Godhead Govinda, whose plenary portion is the Mahavishnu. All the Brahmas, the heads of the universes, live only for the period of his exhaling, after the universes are generated from the pores of his transcendental body." Brahma Samhita 558. Thus, Govinda, or Lord Krishna, is the cause of Mahavishnu also. The ladies talking about this Vedic truth must have heard it from authoritative sources. An authoritative source is the only means of knowing about transcendental subject matter definitely. There is no alternative. The merging of the living beings into the body of Mahavishnu takes place automatically at the end of Brahma's 100 years. But that does not mean that the individual living being loses his identity. The identity is there, and as soon as there is another creation by the supreme will of the Lord, all the sleeping and active living beings are again let loose to begin their activities in the continuation of past different spheres of life. It is called Suptoptita Naya, or awakenings from sleep and again engaging in one's respective continuous duty. When a man is asleep at night, he forgets himself, what he is, what his duty is, and everything of his waking state. But as soon as he awakens from slumber, he remembers all that he has to do, and thus engages himself again in his prescribed activities. The living being has also remained merged in the body of Mahavishnu during the period of annihilation. But as soon as there is another creation, they arise to take up their unfinished work. This is also confirmed in Bhagavad-gītā 8:18-20, Bhagavad-gītā 8:18. The Lord existed before the creative energy was set in action. The Lord is not a product of the material energy. His body is completely spiritual, and there is no difference between his body and himself. Before creation, the Lord remained in his abode, which is absolute and one. So these are fascinating descriptions of the spiritual world and the great transcendental explanations from our Acharya, Srila Prabhupada, about the position of Lord Brahma. It is quite exalted. There's a couple of significant notes, because according to the Vedas, the Sanskrit language is called Devanagari. In the higher planets, they don't speak English or French or Russian or Polish. They all speak Sanskrit perfectly. And the Vedas are considered eternal because they are manifested from the mouth of Narayana, true Lord Brahma, every time there's a new creation. It is very special. Another interesting anecdote, whenever they have marriage ceremonies or Vedic ceremonies or temple opening ceremonies, initiation ceremonies in India, they do what is called a sankalpa. Sankalpa, before they begin anything, they recite, what time are we at? What time is it? According to the life of Lord Brahma. Lord Brahma is in the second period of his life, during the Vaivasvata Manu period, that we are currently in the Kali Yuga, at the beginning of Kali. It's all recited in Sanskrit. It's a very special ceremonies. When we did the opening of the temple in Fiji, Prabhupada told me to consult with Pradyumna to obtain a sankalpa, like exactly on the day of the opening of the temple, the recitation of where we at in the universal time, the second half of Lord Brahma's life, the period of Vaivasvata Manu, the beginning of Kali Yuga, such and such auspicious year, such and such auspicious time. It was very, very sweet. And of all the local people there, greatly loved all these ceremonies and everything. So I'll stop here for a while and we'll let Vishwakarma Prabhu and others. I had all kinds of other material to read, but I don't want to take up too much time here. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna?
Yes, I've been blocked.
Blocked?
Been caught. Yeah, I can't.
Yeah, no, I set it up. Now it's back.
Thank you. Thank you very much. A very profound explanation of these very important verses in the Gita to give us a deeper understanding of our purpose in life. Because really, that is the most important thing, that we are fixed in our spiritual practices that will allow us to leave this life successfully. This is the gift of Krishna consciousness, to be delivered from the cycle of samsara. Because everyone must die, and how we act in this life will determine what happens to us in the future. Prabhupada was writing his books, meeting with people. As we read earlier in his diary, he was writing his books, which we're reading today, but this was not his only business. His business was to meet with people and to reach out to people through letters and contacts to spread Krishna consciousness. So he's writing his books, and during his other hours, constantly focused on his service to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada. So this is the key to success. When we were reading about the length of the existence of the universe, it's quite humbling to see that, considering we only live for a very short period of time in this body. Yet we're so enamored with the body, we're so enamored with the mind, we're so enamored with who we are, that unfortunately we become sidetracked from the real mission. And Prabhupada is giving us the real insight into what is the highest yoga. Let us look at the Yaśodā Prabhu. We'll look at text 15 again today, just briefly. Vinkat Prabhu, after attaining me, the great souls who are yogis in devotion never return to this temporary world, which is full of miseries, because they have attained the highest perfection. So here it's very important to note in the purport, down in the middle, the Mahatmas, the great souls, receive transcendental messages from the realized devotees, and thus gradually develop devotional service in Krishna consciousness, and become so absorbed in transcendental service that they no longer desire elevation to any of the planets, nor do they even want to be transferred to any spiritual planet. They only want Krishna's association and nothing else. Such great souls in Krishna consciousness attain the highest perfection of life. In other words, they are the supreme souls. So Prabhupada, Yaśodā Prabhu, he demonstrated the highest level of Krishna consciousness with his constant focus on spreading the Sankirtan mission of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And this is the reality of each one of us, that we are blessed with this gift, that it's not about so many material achievements. It's not about anything that goes on in the material world that we are concerned about. It is only that we can be engaged in this mission of Lord Chaitanya under the guidance of our spiritual master. That is the perfection of Krishna consciousness. And Prabhu, you mentioned about Jayananda Prabhu and his position in going back home, back to Godhead at the time of death. And that position is the position that we want all of our members to take in terms of executing devotional service. Stay humble, stay focused, stay steady. And in this way, this Krishna consciousness movement will continue to expand under Prabhupada's direction. Yaśodā-nandana Prabhu, please, if you could further comment.
Yes, this is a very important section of Bhagavad-gītā, because it gives us a perspective, a glimpse between the material world and the spiritual world, and what is the real benefit of practicing Krishna consciousness. Because somebody may ask, well, why engage in all these austerities, all this chanting, all the different restriction? I just sent out an email to many participants in this class about different quotations from Srila Prabhupada about the duration of Brahma's life. There's an interesting incident. We were in Hawaii one time on a morning walk with Srila Prabhupada, and what happened in Hawaii, there was a lot of followers of a student of Srila Prabhupada who actually was a yogi and a guru himself before he met Srila Prabhupada. And he had many disciples and students himself, Siddha Swarup Swami. He was quite an accomplished yogi before he met Srila Prabhupada, and many people followed him. We're not talking about a small number. And many of these devotees, some of them were strict, some of them were, a little bit like Hawaii, surfing and growing hair, vegetarians, very nice people, very gentle souls. And the question was raised to Srila Prabhupada, well, what about devotees who are chanting, but they may not be following so strictly? This is what is the position. And one time Prabhupada says, well, it is up to you. You can do it in this life, or maybe, and Prabhupada raised his hand up in the air, you can take a couple million lives if you want. In other words, when we read Bhagavad-gītā, Krishna is very clear. Like we all heard the statement by Srila Prabhupada, every word in his books has meaning. Well, in this situation, we have two words, dukkhalayam, asashvatam. It is full of misery, it is temporary. Now somebody may think, oh, somebody in Hollywood or somebody in Bombay or somebody in Paris, they're so beautiful, or somebody is so rich. Somebody is so strong, or somebody is so famous. Do they suffer? Everyone suffers. Abrahma bhuvana loka punaravartino Arjuna. From Brahma Loka, the top of the universe, to the bottom of the universe, everyone is subjected to suffering. Everyone. Doesn't matter how beautiful they are. One may be the most beautiful woman in the universe, or the strongest man in the universe, or the most handsome man in the universe, or the richest man in the universe. Still there is suffering. Still there is suffering. I came from a very cold country, Canada. When I first came to the temple, Prabhupada said that people in this part of the world must have very bad karma to be born there. Then one devotee apparently told Prabhupada, but it is their good karma that you have come here to deliver the message of Lord Chaitanya. Prabhupada says, yes. That is the power of a pure devotee. It doesn't matter what condition, what situation, where it is, whether somebody deserves it or not deserves it, whether somebody is rich or poor, intelligent or not intelligent, beautiful or not beautiful. It doesn't matter. The pure devotee delivers the mercy and the message of Lord Chaitanya to everyone. Everyone is familiar with that song of Bhaktivedanta Thakur where he explains that Lord Chaitanya says, I am your only friend in this world. I am your only friend. So it is simply our endeavor that we should follow, take shelter of Lord Chaitanya. Just today I got a message from a devotee, a lady devotee, very nice, serious devotee, very devoted to Srila Prabhupada, her husband also, that she was explaining that she had a very challenging circumstance where she took shelter of the name of Lord Nrsingadev and immediately experienced some relief. Well, that is the power of Lord Nrsingadev. He is much more powerful than any of us. That is the power of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Jai Lord Narasimha. Hare Krishna.
Vinkat Prabhu. Thank you, Prabhu. I see quite a few questions, and you had one, or quite a few questions on the chat stream. Maybe we could start to go through them methodically and give answers accordingly. If you could read them out. Start with your question.
Yeah, my question was, in the passage that Yaśodā-nandana Prabhu read today,
yes.
Also there was a mention about Shruti mantra. And also I was starting to read Srimad Bhagavatam 1.1.1. In the first verse, also it's mentioned in the Shruti mantra, it is mentioned that Lord Krishna is the Supreme, and also in the Smriti mantra. So what are these Shruti and Smriti mantras? I couldn't find much information about them. Thank you.
Yaśodā, please.
Shruti mantra means, Shruti means the Vedas, that which is heard. Smriti means in Sanskrit, that which is remembered. Shruti is the original Vedas. Smriti are the corollary Vedic literatures like the Samhitas, the Puranas, Mahabharata, Ramayana, Panchartra literature. There is a whole body of Vedic literature which is not directly Veda. There's the four Vedas. Then there's supplementary Vedic literature. That is what is referred as Shruti, Smriti. They're all authorized. They're all transcendental. Some Mayavadis have got the mistaken understanding that only the Shruti is important. But we see that even Shankaracharya made commentaries on Bhagavad-gītā, which is Smriti. Shankaracharya also made commentaries on the Vishnu Sahasranam, which is from the Mahabharata. So many of these people are not very educated, or they don't quite understand. There's considerable explanation by Srila Prabhupada in many places in his books and lectures about this point, but anybody can look it up on any search engine, type in the word Shruti Smriti, and there's a lot of wonderful explanation by His Divine Grace. But it is just basically, one is called Parushaya, Shruti is called Aparushaya. It is not spoken by any human. It comes directly from Narayana, from Krishna. Smriti is called Parushaya. It is manifested through the agency of great liberated souls like Vedavyas, Manu, Parashara, all kinds of great rishis who have written different samhitas and different explanations. Just like there is a large body of Vedic literatures which is outside of the Vedas. It's considered the overall Vedic literature, but it is spoken, it is revealed through the mouth of great rishis and smritis according to time, place, and circumstances, like that. So I hope that helps. Then there was another question about suffering in Bhauma Lila.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure if I understand the nature of the question. The question is there suffering in Bhauma Lila, the material universe that Krishna appears to perform his pastimes, in which the jiva souls enter before attaining Goloka Vrindavana? Srila Prabhupada has explained in some of his purports, when somebody is liberated, they don't go directly from here to Goloka Vrindavan. They go to a universe first where Krishna is manifesting his pastimes. Just like there is, because the pastimes of Krishna are manifested 24 hours a day. Just like the sun is always manifested somewhere, although at night we may not perceive it. So the pastimes of Lord Krishna, Nitya Lila, are always manifested in one universe or another. So before one goes back to the spiritual world, to Goloka Vrindavan or Vaikuntha, he is transferred to a planet, a universe where Lord Krishna is displaying his planet, and there he is with Krishna in his rasa, and eventually, at the end of that life, then he goes back. As far as whether there's suffering, there's no suffering in Krishna Lila. This is not a proper understanding. There's no suffering in anywhere if one is engaged in a Lila with Krishna. I hope that helps. I don't have the exact quote from Prabhupada's books about that point, but I can dig it out.
Hare Krishna. Prabhuji, yes,
Venkat, what? Any other questions there coming up on the chat for us?
No, no other questions right now.
Okay, I see that Nityananda Prabhu in Vrindavan has a question. Please.
Hare Krishna, yes, Prabhuji. Standava Pranam, all blessings for Prabhupada. My question was for the suffering of the Jiva souls in Bhoma Lila. So just regarding that Krishna associates with all of the Brijvasis, and we read in Krishna book how they do display some type of misery or suffering because of their attachment to Sri Krishna. So that's my question in relation to what you were reading today, where there is Dukhaliyam, happiness and distress in the material world. And since Krishna appears in the material world and he performs his pastimes in Bhoma Lila, do the Jiva souls also exhibit some type of suffering or misery because they are still part of the material atmosphere?
How do they experience suffering if they're in direct contact with Krishna? Where is this idea that somebody who is engaged in the Krishna Lila as an associate of Krishna is suffering? It's not mundane suffering. It's not the suffering of a conditioned soul. Whatever so-called suffering is part of Krishna Lila. When the inhabitants of Vrindavan, when Indra dispatched torrents of rain on the inhabitants of Vrindavan because Krishna had stopped his puja, and Krishna lifted the hill, well, somebody may say that is suffering, but that is part of Krishna Lila. It is not the suffering of a conditioned soul. There's a difference between a Baddha Jiva and a Mukta Jiva. A Mukta Jiva means a liberated soul who is engaged by Krishna's mercy in that transcendental Lila. This is not the suffering of somebody who just got through a flood or an earthquake or a famine in the material world, a conditioned soul. Conditioned soul experience suffering as a result of their karma and being in the material world. When somebody is in the spiritual atmosphere of Krishna in some universe, in Krishna Lila, that is no longer the suffering of the material world. That is transcendental Lila. I hope it's reasonably clear. Is that
Yes,
okay?
that's understandable, Prabhu. Yes, that's okay. Just some addition to that, just because my mind is wandering. So obviously, when Krishna appears in the material universe, not everybody knows that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of God, and not everybody knows that Krishna is present. So in regards to the others that are not in part of Krishna Lila, but still in the same planet or in the same universe, do they also experience all of this?
Well, just like in the battlefield of Kurukshetra, there was hundreds of millions of people there that were killed, and every one of them who saw Krishna, they all became liberated. Prabhupada explained in one lecture that even when Krishna was present on this planet, very few people understood him as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The 5 Pandavas and a few inhabitants of Vrindavan, but there's a lot of these different kings and other people. They did not understand. To understand Krishna in truth is very rare. Very, very rare. Just like how many billions of people on this planet, let's put it in perspective, right? Prabhupada came between 1965 and 1977. He displayed his preaching activities. How many people were on the planet during that time? 5-6 billion. How many people approached Prabhupada? How many people became disciples? And of all these disciples, thousands of disciples, how many of them really understood his teaching? So it is not so cheap to understand Krishna or to understand the exalted position of a pure devotee of Krishna. Just like I've been asked that question so many times by different devotees. Why is it that some of you people, Prabhupada disciples, it's like there's one woman in Florida, I can't remember her name, but she made a video. Why is it that so many of you Prabhupada disciples who had direct association with Prabhupada did not seem to understand what he was teaching? We see so many discrepancies in people's understanding, in devotees' understanding. Even though some of these devotees were with Prabhupada, they got letters from Prabhupada, they went on morning walks with Prabhupada, they had direct living association with Prabhupada, but yet some of them ended up to be some of the biggest deviants. In some instances, some of them became the biggest debauchees. So just direct association, either with Krishna or with Prabhupada, is always beneficial under any circumstances. Anybody who just saw Prabhupada will get some transcendental benefit. But to fully understand, that is not so cheap. Just like Prabhupada himself said, when Krishna was here, not everybody understood and accepted him as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is why the association of a pure devotee, of an unalloyed, completely pure devotee, is so rare, is so beneficial, is so powerful. Someone like Prabhupada. Just yesterday, I was speaking to a devotee from England 2 days ago, and I was listening to this person thinking, how does this person understand things with such clarity, with such devotion, with such feeling and such faith? And I see some people who were with Prabhupada in his room, they were big devotees, but they don't have that same level of understanding. Although that person never saw Prabhupada physically, never had the chance like us, some of us, to go on his morning walks or get letters from him or being called to in his room and say, go do this, go do that. That devotee never had that chance. How does he have a higher level of understanding and realization? How? I know of one woman who regularly comes on this call who's in that same category. Her level of understanding is miles ahead, millions of miles ahead of many of these people who were with Prabhupada every day. Why? Because this is a transcendental process. It is a Vani process, not a Vapu process. This is quite a very important point. Vishwakarma Prabhu has often said that this process is a Vani incarnation process, to associate and learn the Vani incarnation of Srila Prabhupada, his transcendental messages, transcendental books. If one can grasp that and pay attention to that and dedicate himself to that, then that is the greatest fortune. That is the greatest benefit. Whether man is a man or a woman, whether somebody saw Prabhupada or did not see Prabhupada, that is irrelevant. Just think how many people came in contact with Prabhupada during his preaching years. Did everybody become a full-fledged devotee? No. How many people saw him? How many people read his books? It is not so easy. It also depends, like Prabhupada says in the Nectar of Devotion, usually when people take up to devotional service, it is because in the past life they've done this. We don't know what somebody has done in their past life. They may have been a very advanced, very elevated soul who may not have been able to complete, and they're picking it up now. They're picking it up and become very advanced very quickly. I'll shut up for now, and I hope it helps. Hare Krishna. I see that Puranjan is on this call. I think Tim Lee, Puranjan is on this call. Maybe you want to have him to make a few comments.
Puranjan, Haribol, glories to Prabhupada. Good to see you with us this morning. Is there any comment you'd like to make in regards to the discussion this morning?
Well, I just, I'm going to post a video pretty soon from some gentleman from India who's promoting the Ritvik idea. He has very nice videos in Hindi and English. And if you look at the comments, he's got like hundreds and hundreds of comments on the videos. So I recommend everybody check that out and make comments to encourage him. But he's raising an interesting question. Who authorizes the Ritvik? And he's saying we have to authorize ourselves because, you know, the GBC is not going to do it. No one else is going to do it. So we have to empower ourselves to promote Srila Prabhupada just on our own volition, because if we wait for someone else to authorize us or empower us, it's not going to happen. So it's very encouraging, I think, and it's a breakthrough because we need Indian people to get on board, and I see gradually more of that is happening. So that's really a good sign. I mean, and simultaneously, things are really falling apart in the GBC guru world, let's say. So that's also encouraging and good for us. Bhavananda's in Australia right now. I don't know what's going on, but supposedly he's been reported to the police, and the police might be investigating him. I'm not sure yet, but people are after him. That's the bottom line.
We're going to, thank you very much. We're going to have a kirtan now, which will be the end of the class, a discussion and reading. And at the same time, after that, we'll continue on with an Istagosti style discussion amongst those that wish to stay on board with us. And we want to thank everyone for joining us this morning with this Bhagavad-gītā class. It's a sadhana program we're following. And as you were saying, Paranjana, it is most important for each individual person to develop their own discipline. You know, it's very important for people to follow the process of Krishna consciousness personally. That is the issue. Not that we're interested in acquiring a large number of followers. We're interested in quality people that enjoy the chanting of the japa that they do each day. They enjoy hearing the books of Srila Prabhupada, reading them, and they enjoy the preaching work that they're performing with the people that they're involved with locally. These are really key to your advancement in spiritual life. And you're right, it's this movement, and we'll discuss it after in our post-class environment, is really something that goes on. It's a history, but the most important thing is our own personal application to the process and begging the mercy that Srila Prabhupada will allow us to continue this service as we move forward towards our own eventual demise. Glories to Srila Prabhupada. Bhaktivedanta, could you please bring the kirtan forward?
Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Haribo, Haribo. So thank you everyone that was at the class and is carrying on with us in this further discussion on Krishna consciousness. And we're open. This is more of an open session where you can bring up different points in terms of your experience in Krishna consciousness or your understanding of Krishna consciousness. So, Vinkat, do we have any questions that you can see pending here? Oh, here's Nityananda Prabhu
Krishna.
in Vrindavan again. Please, sir. Prabhu.
Yeah. Hare Krishna, dear devotees, please accept humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Glories to Prabhupada.
Yeah, Jay, I got a lot of questions. I don't think we'll get to finish all of them, but I'll ask a few questions to the Prabhupada disciples. Dhanava pranams to Prijana Prabhu. Glad that he's here. Okay, so I have a format of questions, but since Prabhu is here, Prijana Prabhu is here, I would like to ask questions that are out of my format. Regarding the Gaudiya Math and Srila Prabhupada's God brothers, the association after Srila Prabhupada's entering into Nitya Leela, after Srila Prabhupada left, how do we view that, especially in today's times when the society of ISKCON, the GBC ISKCON, which is fake ISKCON, is so corrupt? Where do devotees get proper association from? Or should they and can they still associate with Gaudiya Math? As I know, there's 64, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati had 64 Maths, apparently.
Okay, so I'll give an answer to that. I received a letter from Srila Prabhupada personally. Have you seen it, Prabhu?
No, I haven't.
Okay,
you can send that to me.
We will. Maybe Vinkat can bring it up on the screen. I believe he has it. These instructions, whether it was an instruction to Rupanuga in 1974, I posted that on the Prabhupada Disciples Association Facebook group page, and I wanted you to know that we've had almost 6,000 views of it, in which Prabhupada specifically tells us there not to associate with the Gaudiya Math members, his God brothers. And he sent a similar letter to me, which specifically says, here it is here. Thank you, Vinkat Prabhu, you're wonderful. Please accept my Vishwakarma Das. I'm in due receipt of your later letter dated September 3rd, 75, with the enclosed statement about Ban Maharaj. So I'm not going to get into the explanation at this moment, but Ban Maharaj did come to Toronto, and we allowed him to speak at the temple. And during that time, he demonstrated tears of ecstasy in front of the deities. Prabhupada, he was crying. So Prabhupada was very upset that he had come and that we had let him speak at the temple the Sunday feast. So he's now sending me back a response. So it's specific. So I've now issued orders that all my disciples should avoid all of my god brothers. They should not have any dealings with them, nor even correspondence, nor should they give them any of my books, or should they purchase any of their books. Neither should you visit any of their temples. Please avoid them. So this is very specific to us. And this message that was sent to this fallen soul here is something that's still relevant today. And the reason is that Prabhupada was trying to explain Nityananda Prabhu that his relationship with his god brothers was his business, not ours. Like, stay out of his business. So he's saying specifically, you just focus on my instructions, focus on my books, and focus on my dealings. Now, you'll see different letters that have come out in terms of Prabhupada speaking about his god brothers and different instructions that he's given. But here, for the Prabhupada disciples that I know, and from my personal experience, we're reminded, do not meddle in the business of the Gaudiya Math. Do not get involved with his god brothers. If it's not clear, I don't know what to say. It's just that simple. There's enough to do with our own study of Prabhupada's books, with the following of his instructions, and working together cooperatively as a group in spreading Krishna consciousness throughout the world. Yaśodā, maybe you'd like to further comment, please.
Well, this is a point that comes up at numerous times, because many devotees, after getting either kicked out or driven away or discouraged away from ISKCON, had no place to go, and many of them went to different Gaudiya Math and different godbrothers of Srila Prabhupada. I'm referring to the period after Prabhupada departed here.
Yes.
This is the period that you inquired.
Yes, that's correct.
Many people went to different godbrothers because they had temples, ashrams, and facilities. In other words, the devotees that worked for Srila Prabhupada, they worked very hard to build up the institution of ISKCON. And many people, not just a few, but many, were driven away and kicked out by that new guru system. So what happened is many of them went to the Gaudiya Math. Unfortunately, Prabhupada did not recommend devotees to take that approach, because we see that when Prabhupada was building his institution from 1965 and forward, there was a lot of criticisms of his activities from different senior members of the Gaudiya Math. Prabhupada tried to cooperate with them. Prabhupada requested some land at Mayapur. He was refused. They refused to help him. Different godbrothers of Srila Prabhupada tried to steal some of his disciples away from him. Many of them engaged, especially after 1972, many engaged in propaganda against Srila Prabhupada and our movement, because we as disciples were calling him Srila Prabhupada. And many of them took exception to that. They felt that this was not right. But basically, Prabhupada mentions this in the Chaitanya Charitamrita as well, and his Upadeshamrita, that some godbrothers protested when his disciples called him Prabhupada. So there was a trend of propaganda against our Srila Prabhupada, and there was a lot of things. Prabhupada was a Paramamsa. He was a highly elevated soul. He did not take offense and did not retaliate. He gave some instructions in his Chaitanya Charitamrita to the effect of the breakdown of the Gaudiya Math, explaining what happened, because he wanted to warn his disciples not to do the same thing in his institution. Unfortunately, the leaders of ISKCON did not either read these purports or edited them. They did not quite understand what Prabhupada was telling them. So the difficulty is, as you summarized it, what should devotees do? Well, there are devotees who are emphasizing Prabhupada. We may not have the institutional assets of ISKCON, But we do have association, we do have arrangement, we do have publications. There are devotees that have regular meetings. There are devotees that have temples. There is alternatives to that association. It also depends how much seriousness a devotee has to correctly follow Prabhupada. There is a lot of people who think, well, I follow Prabhupada in my head, in my mind, in the head. Okay, that's nice. But to follow Prabhupada seriously and correctly, one cannot neglect the instructions. One cannot pick and choose which instruction we're going to follow and which instruction we're not going to follow. And I'm very familiar with many statements from people in ISKCON who say, well, only within ISKCON can you make spiritual advancement. Well, that's very nice. That's a very nice statement you make. Are you really following? Why are you changing the teachings? Why are you changing the books? There's a lot of unanswered questions about the behavior and policies of these people in ISKCON. So for those devotees who are serious about following Prabhupada now, they can associate with this group, the Prabhupada Disciples Association, Hare Krishna Society, and get a deeper understanding of his teaching, of his instruction, and try to follow that way. But if somebody wants to go to the Gaudiya Math, we can't do anything about that. We can't control what they're going to do.
Yes.
I don't know if that helps.
Yes, no, that's very nice. Thank you, Prabhu. I just want all the Prabhupada's disciples to share on this basis. I would also like to find out, like, the devotees, Srila Narayan Maharaj, devotees say that he was called to do the last rites for Srila Prabhupada, his last rite ceremony. So regarding that, they take that as him being close to Srila Prabhupada and also wrote many letters to him. And therefore they suggest, or they preach in that way. I've seen them preach in that way, that because Srila Prabhupada is close to him, then they should also, go and associate with Narayan Maharaj's disciples in that camp. You have a comment
Yes.
on that?
I wanted to comment on that because we had a god brother who became a follower of Sridhar Swami and Narayan Maharaj. What was his name now? Jagadguru Swami, who changed his name to a different name, I think Nrsimha something. He would go around and say that Sridhar Swami or Narayan's explanations were much more elevated. And that is a tendency amongst various people that were disciples of Srila Prabhupada that have gone over to the Gaudiya Math, where they begin to minimize Prabhupada's explanations. Like I had a conversation with Bhagavat. I don't know if you know him. He, Bhagavat Swami now, and he was a friend of mine in the early years. I used to see him in India when we went to the Mayapur Vrindavan festivals. And he was always there, like myself and Yaśodā. We attended all the events. And he told me recently in a conversation, well, that instruction that you received from Prabhupada to avoid the association of his godbrothers was just for you. Now, somehow or other, he can't read English properly. The exact words were that: do not associate with my godbrothers, do not exchange books. So these people that are working with the Gaudiya Math, like I have another friend, you probably know him, he's at the Sridhar Swami ashram in Vrindavan there. His name used to be Kashiram. Now, I'm not sure what his name is now. We were godbrothers in the early years here in Toronto. And then after he was in Toronto, he left and went to LA and New York. And he worked with Rameshwar and Tamal Krishna, etc. He was quite a successful bookseller, So he got so discouraged by the events that transpired in the groups that he was serving with, like in LA with Rameshwar. He came into the room, for example, and found Rameshwar in an inappropriate situation with a lady, that he decided that he would just leave there and go to the Gaudiya Math group out of discouragement, out of disappointment. I think the same thing happened to Jadharani, where they beat her up in New Vrindavan, and she was like just thrust out of the ISKCON movement in a very unfortunate manner. And instead of just giving up, or going on her own, she decided to go into that association with the Gaudiya Math people. And so, like that, we call it post-traumatic stress syndrome, ISKCON's syndrome, like being in the, how can I say, Nityananda, being in the army.
Yeah.
You go in the army and you have these bad experiences, and then when you come out, you have to go through some kind of rehabilitation. So a lot of the God brothers and God sisters, not a lot of them, but some of them, instead of just stopping association, they felt compelled to go into a different ashram or a different group. And then this way they would, carry on with their devotional service in that association. So there's a lot of trauma that's gone on, a lot of, and the other thing is, there's a lot of anger in people that were in the mission and then they got abused, or their kids were abused. So they go on this vendetta. It's a vendetta to punish these other people and it goes on as a campaign that they don't stop. They're relentless at it. Whereas we have to be more positive in dealing with new people and bringing Krishna consciousness to them, like we're doing in the classes. We've gone through transition with the classes, like the current classes. So that's why we introduced this after hours discussion, because we want people to know the main focus is to discuss our philosophy. It's the main thing is to present Prabhupada, as Yaśodā-nandana Prabhu explains. It is a discussion and a reading. It's a reading and a discussion, I should say. It's not a class, it's a reading. And what we're doing is trying to fill the cup up with as much information for all of us to understand this philosophy and be able to put it in perspective so that we can take up the mission accordingly and not be preoccupied with all of the sort of difficulties that Prabhupada's original movement is undergoing now because of so many deviations. That
Can
is
I make
not.
a comment, Haribo?
Who's that?
This is
Puranjan.
Puranjan.
Go
Yes,
ahead.
please, Prabhu.
Go
Okay,
ahead.
number
Yeah.
one, why
Yeah.
did everybody go to the Gaudiya Math? Because
Pardon?
the GBC went to the Gaudiya Math. When I was protesting Jaitirtha in 1979, the
Uh-huh.
GBC showed me transcripts of their discussions with Sridhar Maharaj, where Sridhar Maharaj says none should protest. So I was a protester. I was a bad guy, according to Sridhar Maharaj. And Sridhar Maharaj went on supporting them until 1986. A lot of people don't realize this. Hansaduta went to Sridhar in 1986. I was there. I was in Berkeley.
Okay.
And he told Sridhar, he said, I'm having sex with half dozen women. I'm taking drugs. I'm only awake 1 hour a day because I'm taking so many drugs. What should I do? And Sridhar said, there's only one thing you can do. Sit in the Vyasasana and be a guru. And Hansaduta said that is the worst advice any human being ever gave another human being in the universe. So why everybody went there is because the GBC led everybody there. The GBC went to Sridhar, the GBC went to Narayan, and then everybody followed the GBC. And I just made a video about one of their big swamis, and I analyzed his discussion. I just put that up recently on my YouTube,
Yes.
where I go
that.
through all these points. How did we get to Narayan? How did Narayan become a big authority? Because he was Tamal's bucket boy. That's why. He was in Texas with Tamal. When I was in Texas fighting Tamal in court, having him sued for $400 million, Narayan was in Texas at the same time. And some of our friends went to Houston Temple, where Narayan was, and they said, "Hey, look, we don't think Tamal is a authorized authority." And Narayan was literally shouting at those friends of mine. He was spitting. He was sitting across he was 3 feet across the table, and my friends could feel the spit coming from him. He was yelling and shouting, "Tamal is the dear tree of Radharani." Oh, well, yeah, and he's also the #1 supporter of your molesting problem, which I am suing for $400 million. Hello? And is he going to pay the $400 million? Is Narayan going to pay that? No. You're going to pay it. You pay it. He's screwing ISKCON. You get to pay, and he gets what? He gets a bunch of people from Tamal and from ISKCON. So when we were in India in 1971, the Godbrothers were complaining that Prabhupada's book, or Prabhupada's title, Back to Godhead, is bogus. And I was there. And they said, Back to Godhead is bogus because we were never with Krishna originally. So Srila Prabhupada said, they do not understand we were once with Krishna because they are tinged with Mayavadi. And he was talking about all of them, Sridhar and Narayan and all of them. Now, one of the sticking points, the GBC said, Narayan can be allowed into ISKCON, providing, he says, that the jivas fall from Vaikuntha, which is what Prabhupada says. But Narayan never, ever accepted. In fact, he said, I will never accept this idea. This is bogus. You can see that. It's in that recent lecture that I just put up from them. He says he will never accept. So they will never accept Back to Godhead. They will never accept Prabhupada's founding original principle. So there's many connections that people don't make, And people tell me, oh, I've given up on ISKCON. There's a bunch of molesting, so I'm with Narayan. Oh, you're with the bucket boy, the supporter, the cheerleader, the #1 advocate of Tamal. You're with that group. So you've just gone around in a circle. You haven't left anything. You're with them. You're with that system. You're with the #1 cheerleader of that system. So you've gone nowhere. You've gone zero. You're gone backwards.
Yeah. That's right. So, Prabhupada, I got another question just in relation. So I've seen how they have picked certain gurus to be their, to be their guru actually. This Gaur Govinda Maharaj, some devotees went on their own flank and they've made their own system and they say that this is a pure devotee and they worship in him. Yet he has a lot of contradictions in what he says. He's basically repeating Srila Prabhupada, and he says that one cannot get transcendental knowledge of Divya Gyan from books and from audio, from listening. But meanwhile, his own disciples promote his books and promote his audio lectures and say that he is, so that's like a little bit of, that is hypocritical. But he was formerly a guru with the GBC, or appointed from the GBC, and then he got kicked out, if I'm not mistaken, because of his own propaganda that he had happening. I don't know if any one of the disciples can comment on that.
Yaśodā could give us further insight, please.
Well, I just want to make a correction. He was never kicked out. He was allowed to stay in an ISKCON because he got his license or his vote from the very same people that he was criticizing.
Okay.
Now, we met this Gaur Govinda, Puranjan and myself, in 1993 in Badger, California. And Puranjan explained to him that this whole idea of guru appointment was never done by Prabhupada. There's no proof for it. There's no evidence for this idea that Prabhupada appointed one successor or a group of successor or a group of Diksha gurus. He admitted that was correct. As part of these discussions, he admitted, this is quite significant, that the personality of Kali has infiltrated the highest positions in ISKCON. He was at odds with all these people. He was often preaching that these people are deviating and this and that. The problem with him is that he went on preaching this living guru idea like this, that you cannot get spiritual knowledge by listening to tapes of Srila Prabhupada. You have to have a living, physically present guru. Well, this is nice and good, but now his followers, now that he's departed, people are promoting his tapes. So when people brought up all these quotes from Srila Prabhupada, that Prabhupada says the guru is always present in his instruction, Vani is more important than Vapu, he lives forever by his divine instruction and the follower lives with him, that went into one ear and went out the other, because he was basically promoting the same nonsense living guru philosophy that the GBC is promoting, minimizing Srila Prabhupada and emphasizing themselves. So there has been a lot of exchanges with this Gaur Govinda by numerous devotees challenging him over this nonsense idea that you cannot make spiritual advancement by listening to Prabhupada's tape, which is an idea that we do not accept. We do not accept this nonsensical idea. I'm sure Puranjan can speak on that if he has some time.
Well, a lot of people don't remember this or realize this, but the very last thing Gaur Govinda was doing just before he departed, he made a public announcement that he was going to challenge the GBC over the Jiva Tattva issue. He was going to prove that we did not fall from Vaikuntha. He was going to prove that Prabhupada is bogus and all the rest of it. And he clearly supported Narayan. He in fact said Narayan and Sridhar are correct. We do not fall from Vaikuntha. So he made a series. It's on YouTube. You can see it, where he's talking, and he's saying over and over, "We do not fall from Vaikuntha," and that and anyone who says that is bogus. Well, Prabhupada says that.
Yes.
So then what happened? He said, "I am going to get a group of the Brahmins, the local Brahmins in Mayapur, to make a public protest in front of the Mayapur temple. We're going to protest this idea that you come from Vaikuntha." Of course, the local Brahmins are Mayavadis. So yeah, they're going to support him. So then he mysteriously departed at that time. Just at that exact time that he made that challenge, he departed. Now, some people think his departure was not an accident, because he was just sitting up and his head just drooped over, and So his followers wrote me right away, and they said, "We think he was poisoned." And, they wanted to investigate it. I said, "Well, you got to get his body." They said, "Well, Jai Taka people already moved his body." And they moved his body to a sewer.
Yes, I saw that.
Yeah, they buried his body in a sewer. So the city had already said, "We're going to dig this up. We got to put a new pipe in here. The pipe is leaking." But the pipe was leaking for years. They knew that. They dug up the sewer spot and put him in the sewer. And I made a
yeah, I saw that video. Yeah,
talk about that on my blog, about how he was buried where the pigs are, go to eat and everything else. The pigs go to eat stool, and that's where they put his. That's what they. But if you put a body in a sewer, then you're going to make it very difficult to analyze, was this body poisoned, yes or no, because it's going to be full of toxic materials. So I think they did that on purpose.
So regarding this, while we're on this topic about the Jiva soul and the falling down, there's one of my questions on the format list, which is, I'm going to jump it up to bring it up now, since we are on here. So yes, Prabhupada did state that the Jiva souls, that we fell down from you know. And in Jaiva Dharma, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that that we don't fall. The Jiva soul comes from the Tatasya. So from my understanding, I just want to share something from my understanding just to make it clear. And then I would like the Prabhupada disciples, they can also give an explanation. From what I understand by what Prabhupada says, because Guru means one, and obviously Guru preaches the same message. So Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur cannot say something different, and Srila Prabhupada cannot say something different. It has to be the same. So from my understanding of what is being said by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, where the Jiva souls don't fall down, they come from the Tatasya. And from where Srila Prabhupada says that the Jiva souls fall down from Goloka, from Vaikuntha, is that from time immemorial, so when I agree that Srila Prabhupada says that the Jiva souls fall down from Vaikuntha, which we do, then eventually, after innumerable lives in this material world, we eventually, after the day of Brahma, we go back into the abdomen of Mahavishnu and then get released out from there in the next day of Brahma, which is actually the Tatasya that I am understanding it from. If anyone can correct me or can clarify that as how these two statements where Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur says one thing and Srila Prabhupada says one thing, and regarding that Guru's instruction is one.
Prabhupada told us don't read that Jaiva Dharma. The Jaiva Dharma that was being circulated by the Gaudiya Math, he said it was edited by his godbrothers. Do not read that book. So I'm not sure which edition of Jaiva Dharma we're referring to, number one. Number two, Prabhupada said, we all originated in Krishna's Leela or sport. We may think we came from Brahman because we have gone back to Brahman many times and we've been in Brahman. So we think that's our origin. But he says, even before that, you were with Krishna. So he explains that very clearly. But also, I've gone through this with the Gaudiya Math. What they're really saying is that there's two classes of souls. One class of soul is liberated all the time. They're in heaven with God. Okay, like the Christians say that. And the Christians say, wait, then there's a subclass of souls, which is us idiots who ended up in the material world. Okay, so Krishna makes two classes of souls. He makes one child with a silver spoon, and he puts the other child in the shithole. Does any ordinary father do that? I'm a father.
That's 100%.
Do I put one of my children in? No. So they're preaching Christian idea. This is the Christian idea that there's some souls in heaven, the angels, and some people not angels. That is not our philosophy.
Exactly. So they've edited these books of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Yes. So we have to obviously be careful about it. That's why Srila Prabhupada also mentioned don't associate with the God brothers because of these reasons. They'll present them some things that are not true.
And do not read their books.
Yes.
He said, do not read their books.
Let me just tell a little story here. In 1971, Guru Kripa and myself went to the Gaudiya Math in South Calcutta. This is the famous temple that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur expressed that I wish that I could sell all the marbles to print books.
Yes.
This is that famous white marble temple that was built by a very wealthy disciple of Bhaktisiddhanta, and when he saw that there was so much fighting amongst the disciples for different rooms, he expressed that desire to sell everything to beget books. So we went there. We wanted to get copies of the original Brahma Samhita that had been published during the lifetime of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So some old devotee took us to a room, very dusty room. We gave him a few rupees, a donation. He gave us a bunch of Brahma Samhitas, old books. We brought back the books to the Calcutta temple and showed them to Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada told Guru Kripa and me, says, he looked at the book and looked at the date of publication. It was before 1936. It says, that book is okay, it can be read. But do not buy any books after 1936 because my godbrothers some of them started to edit the books of my Guru Maharaj. So the same problem we now have in ISKCON with this book-changing idea was also there in the post-1937 Gaudiya Math. It is not something new. History repeats itself. So this is a difficulty with reading these translations. Who has translated them? What is the qualification of the translator? What is his level of realization? What is the level of expertise? And what is the political motivation behind these people? Because they're trying to say Prabhupada was wrong. That's what they're really trying to say. You know, Prabhupada was not wrong. Just like me, give you an example. There's a place in the Mahabharata where it explained that Narayana is confirmed in all the Vedic literatures as being the original Godhead. And Jiva Goswami's Krishna Sandarbha says there is nothing wrong with that statement. You know, some of these points are highly specialized, complex, detailed, esoteric points that great acharyas have spent a lot of time and details explaining. It's not just, it's like black or white. It's a little bit different. There's just a lot of subtleties in these things. The Krishna Sandarbha is a very detailed book. It was translated by Kushakrata in English. And when you read that book, even Prabhupada summarizes that book in his Chaitanya Charitamrita. There is so many detailed explanation how Krishna is the original personality of God, despite the fact that many Vaishnava Sampradayas in South India are openly preaching that Narayana is the origin and Krishna is an avatar of Vishnu. Now, somebody may say, I've seen this because I've read all of these books on that controversy. There's a place in the fourth canto, Prabhupada says, the conclusion is that no one falls from Vaikuntha. Well, if you look in Prabhupada's books, there's a place in Chaitanya Charitamrita where he quotes from the Skanda Purana that if your Vaishnava breaks Ekadasi and he's grands on Ekadasi, even if he's transferred to the spiritual world, he has to come back here. There is another place, there's the story in the Bhagavatam, Jaya and Vijaya. Well, of course, this is Krishna Lila, but they were in the spiritual world, they came here. So there's a lot of subtle explanation. In other words, if somebody wants to deal with this issue, anything that comes from the Gaudiya Math should be looked upon with great suspicion because they were politically motivated to discredit Srila Prabhupada, to criticize Srila Prabhupada, and every chance they get to basically deny Srila Prabhupada his position as the greatest preacher in the history of Gaudiya Vaishnavism. I've seen this. In 1972 at Mayapur, two of Bhaktisiddhanta's disciples, they were very senior sannyasis, came to see Srila Prabhupada. There was no temple built. There was just a hut. There was a hut in the Pandal. Prabhupada, we had built a bamboo hut for him. They came there and they started to speak with him. And at one point, they requested us to leave the room. So we went outside the room, and there were some bamboo slats there, and we could see there was a very animated discussion taking place. And at some point, they were raising their voices, and the word Prabhupada was being mentioned. And our Srila Prabhupada rang his bell, and he told his secretary, bring me my letterhead. And he showed him his letterhead. He says, Tridandi Goswami, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. Prabhupada says, I do not call myself Prabhupada. My disciples called me Prabhupada. I do not call myself Prabhupada. And they started to raise their voice, pointing their fingers at him and accusing him. And then they walked out. They stepped over a large feast of prasadam that had been cooked by Bhaktisiddhanta's cook, Ananda Prabhu, who incidentally was following our Prabhupada and was very respectful of Prabhupada. After that, the propaganda started against our Srila Prabhupada. So even after he departed, this kind of propaganda started that Prabhupada was wrong, he didn't explain things properly. First of all, they have to read everything Prabhupada said on it regarding Brahma Jyoti, the souls. Prabhupada one time says these kind of discussions are like trying to discuss whether, he gave an example of a lecture in Australia, whether or not the crow fell from the tree or the branch broke or some example like that. He says it's irrelevant. He says what you have to do is now focus on getting out of here. Practice, chant, follow, take prasadam, worship Tulsi, hear Srimad Bhagavatam. This is the real necessity. Now, you can look, I mean, there's a lot of discussion by great acharyas on Vedanta Sutra, on Bhagavatam commentaries. Many of them says they never left. Prabhupada was preaching in the West. Who knows why he made these statements? But there are definitely a lot of statements from Srila Prabhupada in conversations when they ask him, how did the living entity fall here? And Prabhupada's explanation every time was the living entity is always independent. You have independence to follow Krishna, not follow Krishna. You are not a stone. So there is a lot of different conversations and numerous points, as Puranjan Prabhu explained.
Yes.
And it's basically, if somebody wants to get into all the details, they can look at all the conversations that Prabhupada said. And basically, I don't have an issue because Prabhupada said, this has been going on since time immemorial. I can't calculate when it happened. So basically, that's
I understand.
my 2
Yeah.
cents worth of it.
All right.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much, everyone. We're going to terminate the class now and the discussion, post-discussion,
I
because
think there's one more question, Prabhu, from a person online, from a YouTube question that's in the chat.
we're going to...
Yeah, it's related to this Brahma Samhita
Yes.
discussion.
Oh.
That.
Actually, the Brahma Samhita version, which was published by is Brahma Samhita second printing 1991 BBT Trust bona fide. That is, was it printed from the books Yaśodā-nandana Prabhu got in 1971 or from the Gaudiya Math adulterated version?
My understanding is the Brahma Samhita version that was published, I don't know, I'm not referring to the 1991 version, whenever they published it, was the original exact purports of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Prabhupada, there is a letter when they asked Prabhupada said, do not even change a comma of what my Guru Maharaj has written. So it is not the adulterated version, it is the original Brahma Samhita. The Brahma Samhita has been commented in Sanskrit by Jiva Goswami, by Bhaktivedanta Thakur, has been cited many times by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and our Srila Prabhupada has quoted thousands of times from different verses of Brahma Samhita. Very, very important book. As a matter of fact, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, there is a verse by Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami where he says that there is no scripture higher than the Brahma Samhita. In our Sampradaya, this is a very, very important text, very important scripture, both for transcendental recitation and study. So I hope it helps.
Okay, so what we'll do is, Venkat Prabhu, we're going to end the discussion for today because tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. we'll begin with the Srimad Bhagavatam reading again. And then after that, we'll continue on with the discussions in our sadhana program here at the Prabhupada Disciples Association. So thank you everyone for your participation. It was a very lively discussion after class today. And we
Just a comment by
Yes,
Andabaya
Prabhu.
Mataji. She had a, well, do you want to say it, Mataji? Or okay, well, she has recently moved to Prabhupada Village in North Carolina, and she
Okay.
just wanted me to let everyone know that they have a lot of sets of the original Chaitanya Charitamrita, I think, available for people in the US if they want to
Awesome.
obtain them.
Well, let's bring it up tomorrow again when we have a larger group with us to make people aware that they can still buy these original books that are still in print before they're all gone. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Nityananda,
Yeah.
Ranjana, Anandabaya, Madan Devanath.
Also, there is a devotee here named Nandi Mukhi Mataji from Florida. Very welcome, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Right.
Vijay
Or
Pandit.
Nandi Mukhi or Jwalamukhi or some kind of Mukhi, somebody. Very welcome.
All glories
Krishna.
to Srila Prabhupada and his disciples. Yeah.
Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu.
Kripa Sindhubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavibhyo namo namaha. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
Krishna, 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 Hare Hare.
Hare
Ram,
Om.
Ram, Ram, Hare Hare.